It's a big time for West Virginia. Of course, broadband accessibility is difficult in the Mountain State. We all know that, but here's some people who are working to change that. Of course, Senator Shelley Capito, thank you for joining us.
Thanks,
and Alan Davidson, Assistant Secretary with the Department of Commerce, and you can explain exactly what you do in your job title in a moment. But these are two people very much responsible for the money which will be pouring into West Virginia over the next several years to increase broadband accessibility. May I start with our guest?
Sure.
And ask a question.
Sure.
A year ago, you guys were talking during a committee meeting. Well, she was questioning and you were answering, but that's talking.
I'm sure that's how it was.
We'll count that. And money had been allocated, but it might not have been enough to feed the need of West Virginia. Did you have any idea before you were educated on it, before you educated yourself, before you visited, before you saw, just how difficult the situation was here and just why it was going to cost so much money?
Well, let me just start by saying, first of all, thank you. Good morning. It's wonderful to be here. And really, there is no substitute for being here in person and getting a chance to see directly the challenges here in terms of connecting everybody with good high-speed internet service, which we know in this day and age is a necessity, not a luxury. I will say the senator has been a tireless leader in this issue. And our first meeting, I heard all about West Virginia and all about the needs of the state. And I think our team, we have a team who's been out here. We've given other kinds of grants out here. So we had an idea of the challenges. And I think I'm so thrilled about the fact that there are real resources coming now that we're fairly confident are going to make sure that everybody in West Virginia gets connected.
Everybody has issues that they want to trumpet and work on. Senators, representatives, everybody has causes. This seems like, and I don't want to speak for you, but this seems like your #1 priority, at least at the top of your priority list. Why did you decide that this, with Capito Connect, the program's been going on for a while, why was this what you wanted to take care of most?
Well, I think I could see, first of all, the great need as I was traveling the state when I first became senator. You know, I had the one district, then I have the whole state, and I'm realizing, wow, there's a lot of pockets of non-served and underserved. Then, when COVID came, it really magnified how far behind we were falling because we couldn't connect our students to their classes. We couldn't telehealth because we weren't, seeing our doctors in person as much anymore. People wanted to remote work. They wanted to come to West Virginia, particularly from the D.C. area. And if you can't connect, you can't do it. And so it really, and then I had a lot of meetings all around the state, and I realized property values, attracting young people, all the things we talk about every day about what's important to West Virginia, we have to have this connectivity. So, and it's measurable. That's another thing. A lot of what we do is not measurable. This is measurable. And so I think in terms of being successful, I hope this is a big success.
West Virginia, not the most populous state, not the biggest state, but yet getting the 11th most amount of money, the 11th highest amount of money coming on this project. Does that happen because of the geography and the difficulty and just the way to serve those thousands of underserved areas? It has to just be that price tag.
It's really a function of a formula about how many unserved people there are here, and
there's a bunch.
And there's a bunch, and that's really the starting point. As the senator was saying, in this day and age, it's amazing. Here we are in 2023, and there are still thousands and thousands of homes in West Virginia, millions across the country, that cannot get that basic internet service or don't have the tools to get online. And that's got to change. We've been talking about the digital divide in this country for over 25 years. And now, thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law, thanks to the good works in Congress, we actually have the resources to do something serious about it. And the law that passed basically gave us a formula and said the amount of money we're going to give out, we have $42 billion in a big state grant program. The way that money is given out is based on the need. And we were given very clear directions in that law that basically said this is going to be a function of how many unserved locations you have in your state.
If you don't do that, maybe the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. If you just go to population size or some other metric. So need is actually driving this.
Need is driving it, and there's a map. We spent the last almost a year working on a map that comes from the FCC.
That's critical.
Yeah.
The map is critical because if we don't know where the unserved locations are, we don't know where to spend the money. And I will say, and a salute to the senator, She's been holding our feet to the fire. She's been pushing West Virginia hard too to make sure that that map is as good as possible. And it really showed in the final results. And that's part of why West Virginia is getting the money that it's getting, over $1.2 billion.
He mentions West Virginians. West Virginians played a part of this with the speed tests that people were doing, and that helped more clearly illustrate the map, right?
And the other thing we did, they used to, this is a bit technical, but they used to take what they called census tracts. So if you and I live in the same census tract and you're served and I'm not, then I'm counted as served. Now, because it's much more granular, we were able to go to every location, the home, and so we encouraged, and we encouraged West Virginians when the first maps came out, and it was encouraged by the FCC and by Mr. Davidson and everybody to look in there, put your address in, and see what happens. And what happened is we challenged about 120,000 different locations, and about over 80,000 of those were found unserved. So originally they were not going to be a part of this, and that's why we kept emphasizing you've got to get the number up, because it's definitely going to predicate how much money we're going to get.
And I'll just say, it really made a difference, because in the first draft of the map, we knew it wasn't going to be great. This was run by the FCC. And
it's a broad map in the beginning.
It's a huge project. Well, the original versions a couple of years ago, as the senator said, I love it when a senator nerds out on us about broadband. The original version of the maps were terrible, and everybody knew it. The new versions that we're working on now are much better, and they map 110 million different locations in the country. It's a very complicated map, and it's good. But the version that came out in the fall, I think a lot of us knew it had a lot of holes, and the work that the state did.
The state did a lot of work on it.
Really made a huge difference, and West Virginia was one of the top 10 states also in terms of increases in unserved location from the first version of that map to the second. So it was a homework assignment that the state did really nicely, and that's part of why the money is there.
I'd like to say some people are likening broadband to water as far as the infrastructure you need, and we're still working to get in West Virginia in some places, obviously. Maybe they're not. Maybe I'm the only guy saying that. But it really is kind of, if you don't have it, you can't do business. You're not as attractive to people moving in. 1.2 billion is what West Virginia is getting as overall.
Right.
There have been some concerns, again, from me and many others. We gave out a lot of money during COVID.
Right.
And we all know famously that some of that money did not go to its intended purpose. I know that some safeguards have been built into this to make sure that the projects that are getting funded are the projects that should be getting funded. Can you go into those guardrails to keep us on track?
There are a lot of them, and I think people have had the same reaction that you did. We want to make sure that this money is spent well and spent in the way that Congress directed us. So Congress put a whole set of rules in place about how this money needs to be spent, and a set of processes about how we're going to stay on top of it. And it starts with a big homework assignment for the state, which is we know it's going to be $1.2 billion, but we won't release that money until we've got a really good plan from the state about how it plans to spend it.
That's fair.
And there's a lot of rules about what goes into that plan. There'll be a lot of transparency. Everybody will get a chance to comment on that plan. And then we will be, as the state goes forth and spends money, we're going to really emphasize transparency. And we have a lot of infrastructure now in place to make sure that we're going to be watching to see how that money gets spent and make sure it gets spent in the right ways and also gets spent as quickly as possible.
Were you satisfied with the bill that came out, that nothing is perfect and people are going to be people, but that basically we have a pretty good set of rules and guidelines in place to will avoid this massive fraud that happened during COVID?
Yeah, this is very important to me because, this is our second cut at the ball, really, with the Department of Commerce program that we had in 2010. And remember, it was not rolled out properly, and we found some issues. Technology's changed. Right. Here's what I think the big difference for us is going to be, and with their help, the state has really stepped up here through both, certainly Governor Justice, but Governor Tomblin before realized we've got to have a broadband council that really understands the issue, understands the technologies, and Kelly Workman, who is in charge of that, and we're going to be meeting with her today, has done a phenomenal job to pull in the economic development folks to really be accurate, to make sure that, and so the accountability that we have at the state is so much more improved that we're going to be able to meet the metrics and flow into the plans that the Department of Commerce and Congress is demanding that we have.
Planning helps avoid that. Routers in closets and not being used, and things that are sent somewhere which really aren't appropriate for the area.
Or overcharging, overbuilding.
Phantom companies, et cetera.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll just say, I think everybody here is highly motivated because we are not going to get tens of billions of dollars
Right.
again
Yeah.
to do this project. And so the only way we are going to make the mission, which is to connect everybody in West Virginia, everybody in the country, is if we are good stewards of this money, if we use every penny wisely. And we're very motivated to make sure that happens. I think the states are, the state, the governor's office, really focused on the fact that we've got to spend this money wisely or we're not going to meet the mission.
Some money is flowing in right now. When will we start seeing the bulk, really the project getting underway, full steam?
Well, there's money being spent right now. We've had a kind of rolling series of projects. We did a broadband infrastructure program grant, about $20 million in Logan and Mingo counties, I think it is.
Well done,
We've
by
got
the way.
a
Good job.
We just
remember that,
announced
good
a $25 million middle mile grant, which is sort of those like the interstate highways to get to the roads. We did a middle mile grant to the power company that's going to be coming on, and that will start.
McDowell, Wyoming, still southern West Virginia,
Sure.
where
Right.
the services.
And then it will be up to the state in some ways, but the big money starts coming in early next year. So we need to get a plan from the state about how they're going to spend it. Once we approve that plan, we release the first 20%, and then they're off to the races in terms of doing grant making, and there'll be more to come. But I think this is a multi-year project, but we also have a shot clock. We've said, look, you've got to spend this money in the next 5 years. We hope that the bulk of it's going to be spent in the next couple of years.
Oh, I don't think there's any trouble spending money in West Virginia on broadband. There's plenty of projects. I'll give you the last word in this. And I'm frustrated, and I live here. I lived here my entire life. When I'm driving on the interstate and I lose internet service, that to me would seem like that's a killer, because people are driving through the state, and if they're thinking about that, well, no service, what is this? So I know that's just a specific thing that we're working on, but that's I think a symptom of the larger illness. How much is this going to change lives in the state and change futures and change job opportunities, et cetera?
I think it will change lives and futures. And I will say to my fellow West Virginians, it's not just us. There are spots all across the country, even in New York State, that have low service availability or none. And it is very frustrating. I just came over Quarter H, and it's a little spotty coming through there sometimes. So, this is going to make a huge difference. But as you look at what the utilities of the future are, and how we're going to work, how we're going to learn, how we're going to get health care, what kind of things tourists want. We're really plugging tourism here in West Virginia. People want to come to West Virginia. It's remote. You can do all kinds of great things while you're here, but when they get back to their cabin or wherever they stay in, they want to stream, they want to catch up, they might want to work. And so it can be an inhibitor. It's a property value enhancer. I mean, I saw a study where it says if you have a high-speed internet, your house can be worth between $7,000 and $10,000 more. I mean, all these things feed into this. So hopefully we won't be having this conversation in 10 years from now. This will be a given, and it may be more of a technological discussion rather than actual delivery.
I know I said I'll give you the last word, but I do want to ask you, I know we're just starting in some ways with this, but does it feel like you've climbed that hurdle, that mountain to get the money, to get the attention, to get the balls rolling?
Well, like Alan said, this is an enormous infusion. $1.2 billion we're not going to get this opportunity again. It is huge dollars. And I mean, we've got FCC programs, we have Department of Ag programs, we have Department of Commerce programs, but this is the one that's going to really push to the last mile.
Alan Davidson, U.S. Department of Commerce, Shelley Capito. We all know who you are. Senator of West Virginia. Thank you very much for your work. Come back anytime.
Thank you.
And you don't even have to bring a check. Just come back.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys very much. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Kenny.